Well, I've been thinking about the revival. I've got some ideas for you.
I think it'd be quite nice this year to have something that sort of matches in terms of a theme of one of the cars I'm driving.
Right.
Because quite often you're hanging around your race car in the paddock in whatever you're wearing.
So the overcheck being this time the blue with the Kyriakos blue, which picks up in your car.
Fantastic.
With the measurements checked and the fabric selected, the next step for the team at Henry Pool is to modify James's pattern before chalking up and cutting out the fabric. Hi, I'm Kirby Allison, and for years now, I've been exploring the world of quality, craftsmanship, and tradition. This journey has taken me from some of the world's most highly regarded bespoke tailoring houses, all the way to a proper shooting estate in Scotland. I've come to believe that nobody does tradition better than the British, from dressing in the proper attire for a given occasion through the liturgy of the ceremonial. There is always an etiquette at its core. The traditions of dressing properly, the traditions of the country pursuits, the traditions of British ceremony. But in today's video, we explore what could be one of the most exciting of the British traditions, racing. I've been invited by my good friend James to join him as he prepares to race his 1959 Togero in the Goodwood Revival, arguably the world's most renowned vintage racing event. So strap in and enjoy as we experience Britain's golden era of racing. So here we are at the Goodwood circuit for what is arguably the most important vintage car racing event in the world. For those passionate about what many consider to be the golden era of racing, the Goodwood Revival is the event. And as you can hear and see, there is plenty that goes on this weekend. For many here at the Goodwood Revival, it is the opportunity to dress up in period-inspired fashion that draws them to the event. Here I've got a beautiful Leah here dressed in this magnificent red dress. And so I thought as we explore a little bit more about Goodwood's ambiance, you might talk to us about what you're wearing.
Sure. So this is actually a modern dress, but in a vintage style. Mm-hmm. So the off the shoulder neckline is perfect for me. And then I got these lovely vintage shoes from eBay.
Yeah, beautiful.
As well as the gloves and the hat from Paris.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I just sort of matching sort of modern and vintage at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting how the Goodwood Revival is so much more than just the cars. It's about an entire era and really explores every single aspect of that. You know, as someone that is here at Goodwood, I mean, what is it that you find kind of most interesting?
So I definitely love the dance tent. The dance tent is kind of my go-to.
Okay.
That's where I love to be the most. Everyone's just having the time of their life. Everyone's incredibly friendly. Everyone will take your hand to go for a dance. But I also just love walking around the paddock and seeing all the lovely vintage cars and just everyone just absolutely loving being in their sort of element, in their vintage element, and loving a wonderful day.
Yeah. Do you come for the race cars as well?
I definitely do. We really enjoy watching the speed and always been a fan of F1, so love the speed of the cars. But I think for me it's more about the sort of the whole day and the style and the feel of it and how happy it makes everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's incredible just how friendly everyone is and how much fun everyone is having.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What is it that you look forward to the most this weekend? Is anything, any particular day or?
I think just more than anything, just sort of experiencing and feeling that sort of elegance that perhaps we miss in our day-to-day life at the moment.
Unfortunately, a little bit of a bygone era.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I'm struck by is, you know, I've been to many racing events, right? I mean, it's easy to find a racing event, but there's really no racing event quite like Goodwood, you know, where whenever you walk through those doors, you know, at the entrance of the Goodwood circuit, you really do feel transported back in time.
Yeah, absolutely. And everyone is feeling exactly the same thing. And I think that's the sort of camaraderie and the sort of British spirit that is just so lovely, especially at the moment, given recent events. And
yeah, no, of course.
I think everyone just feels on high spirits.
Yeah. Well, Leah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You look marvelous, and I hope you really enjoy yourself this weekend.
Thank you so much, Kirby.
Yeah.
Lovely to meet you.
Well, that's one of the things I hear about Goodwood is that, you know, it really is an event that has something for everyone.
Absolutely,
I mean, it has the cars for those that enjoy that, but it's really so much more than just the vehicles. It's an entire environment that takes you back to kind of a bygone era.
Yeah, it's almost like you're back in the 1940s, 50s, 60s, whatever you choose. It's,
Well, many consider this era, you know, the 40s, the 50s, and 60s in some ways the golden era, vintage automobiles and racing, but also fashion.
Yes.
What do you two think about that, and what do you find particularly inspiring about this era of clothing?
Well, for me, with a fashion background, it's the way the clothes are made, the way they're tailored, the lovely way that ladies wore hats and gloves and handbags, and everything just looked so beautiful and polished, which I myself wear clothes like that still at home on an everyday basis.
True, that's,
So it's something I'm very passionate about. So coming to something like this gives us the chance to show off our outfits in public.
Well, it's interesting to think about that because for us, it's dressing up. But for people back then, it just was going out.
Regular, no, it's regular dressing.
Yeah. Do you think we could use more of that this day and age?
Definitely,
100%.
definitely.
So, John, talk to me a little bit about your tweed. I mean, beautiful three-piece tweed
you.
suit.
Appreciate
You've got
that.
an ascot on, nice open collar. You're wearing the fedora. I mean, you know.
Well, I actually put this together at the, we went to the Chap Olympiads. I don't know if you've heard of that.
No.
No, it's...
It was 10 years ago,
It was 10 years
wasn't
ago.
it? So-
Well, you still fit into it. So
I still fit into it, so that's all good, yeah.
Tweed is very practical. I mean, I'm dressed, you know, slightly more Riviera.
Yeah,
But,
it's good
you
look.
know, I mean, what's interesting is here in the countryside how much the temperature drops at night. Of course, tweed being warmer.
Yeah. You need to choose your tweed for the weather, I think. It's. I mean, I've actually got probably a thicker tweed than I need on at the moment.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit hot, but yeah. I mean, you can get some summer tweed that's perfect, you know.
It's easy to see why Goodwood is more than just an automobile race, with everyone dressed in period fashion and really coming proper. So I've got Jess and Chris here, dressed incredibly smart. So one of the things that's interesting, of course, is you've come for the car racing, right? But there's a strict dress code for all of those who are attending Goodwood. Do you find that it impacts the ambience of the event at all?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. It brings everyone together. It unites everyone.
You walk in and it's like magic. It's like you've been transformed back in time. It's great.
Jess, you said this was your first Goodwood.
Yes.
I mean, were you really expecting all of this?
I mean, to be fair, I'd heard a lot of stories from Chris when he came last time, so I kind of knew a little bit about what it was. But I think coming and seeing it is totally different to what you could imagine.
As I said earlier, Goodwood is so much more than just a racing event. It's an entire experience. These girls here really came to the nines, not just in dress, but ready for the party.
It's the best sort of pram.
So talk to me a little bit about Goodwood, the revival, and what it is that draws you to this event.
Just the atmosphere, everything, isn't it? The dress, the dressing up, the era. Everyone's just so happy. Everyone wants to chat, and especially with we've named her Elizabeth, obviously.
Yes.
Because she liked it. She
right?
loved the tipple and the triplets, and yeah, it's just brilliant. It's just brilliant.
Is there a particular era of fashion that you find yourselves most inspired by?
I think every year we've done 40s is our favourite. We did Land Girls last year for a more relaxed feel, but we usually like tea dresses, 40s, bit of glam.
Absolutely.
We always go ahead on the Betty's.
Is that right? Yeah. And you, I mean, are you just as inspired kind of, you know, on the weekend or kind of normally, or is it something you really look forward to just for this weekend?
It's just for Goodwood.
But we've started to look, haven't we? Because we've got so many different outfits now, we've started to look for other festivals that do the same sort of thing, but Goodwood's the best.
It is the best.
Well, ladies, I hope you enjoy the rest of the day. You are certainly in good form.
Thank you.
It was abundantly clear that the Goodwood crowds thoroughly enjoyed the period fashion aspect of the revival. Indeed, it seemed to be just as big an attraction as the actual cars themselves. I was keen to know if this wholehearted respect for the past was also being preserved for the future, and luckily, Simon Cundy had arranged for us to speak with two undisputed experts on the matter, Charles and William, sons of His Grace Lord March, Duke of Richmond.
I've been here since a wee lad of 12 years old. I grew up with that smell of castor oil, and that's what got me into obviously being at Goodwood and understanding the revival and many years that was always racing here. And that's very special to me, and it was just coming back to when the revival came back around again to come and enjoy this. William and Charles here today, the next generation, the next life to the revival itself. It's quite special.
And thank you for taking some time with us, of course.
It's such a pleasure.
You know, one of the things I'm struck is just the tradition of the Goodwood Revival. I mean, of course, it was your great-grandfather, the 9th Duke, that created the circuit, and then your father, the 11th Duke, you know, created the Goodwood Revival, and then here you are, the next generation kind of carrying this forward. I'm just curious, you know, having grown up around this, what is it that strikes you two most about the Goodwood Revival, why it's important?
Well, I think the really exciting thing is what we've seen is the younger generations come through and they love it just as much as their parents do and their grandfathers do. I remember Dad was always very worried. He's like, are the kids going to enjoy it? Are they going to identify with the cars and the fashion and the sentiment that the event represents? And it turns out that they really do. And we've seen like younger and younger people coming, and you know, so many families here now. It's a great event for like a whole generations of families, which is really lovely.
Yeah, no, and exactly that. You know, we're trying to keep the message, make sure the message resonates with the younger generation as we move forward. So, you know, the Revive and Thrive theory behind this year's event and behind last year's event is a really positive one, I think.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I find striking is that, you know, really the Goodwood Revival has become so much more than just the vintage automobiles that are racing here. I mean, it's really a British cultural institution now because of the, you know, the revival aspect in the vintage clothing, you know, really has just showcased and put center stage just this era of Britain, you know, at its greatest.
Yeah, and people really get behind that. I mean, you know, the event is really made by the fact that everyone is willing to dress up, everyone brings their cars and enjoys it and gets involved. I mean, if people didn't want to take part, none of it would work, really.
Yeah. I mean, I was speaking with several drivers and they were kind of commenting about how, you know, the moment you walk through the gates at the Goodwood Revival, you're really transported back and the cars are exciting, but it's the entire ambiance of the weekend that really makes this such a singular event amongst the racing. Racing.
I think it's the effort that all the crowd puts in as well. I mean, there are people here who spend their entire year getting their outfits ready, deciding what to wear, and so them stepping in and becoming a part of the event in a way that other events can't really emulate, because the people who come to the event really do make it what it is, which is very unique.
And I think what's lovely is how you can choose the period. In terms of the years, you can choose some 20s, 30s, 50s, even 60s. This is the time period you can choose from. So in terms of stability, that brings in another element of just bringing you back close to different times as well.
Yeah. There's a durability to things that are made well. We see that with the race cars that 50, 60, 70 years later are still racing. But it's there in so many aspects of British culture. Of course, we focus a lot on the clothing. So I thought maybe you two could share a little bit about what you're wearing. I know you've got something that's special, and so do you.
Yeah, well, this was actually Dad's suit that he had made at Liberty's in about 1970, so it's slightly late, but keep that a secret. So it's actually it's more of a horse racing waistcoat and lining. It's got the odds on it, Steward's Inquiry, sort of 7-1, 20-1 winner. Yeah, exactly.
And it fits you brilliantly.
Fits well. Had to have it slightly extended, but luckily that's hidden under the shoulders.
Excellent.
Yeah, and I'm wearing one of my father's suits as well, and my grandfather's shoes. So we're wearing very old.
So you're really spanning the generations here.
Yeah.
And that's increasingly that's an important part of the event. Is we don't want people buying new things and creating new things. It's about finding old things and rebuilding and remaking and renewing all their old treasured things.
Well, Charlie, William, looking forward to the weekend. Yeah, thank you so much.
Great to see you.
And look forward to seeing you guys at the ball tonight.
Yeah, it'll be fun. Very nice to see you.
Having seen and learnt so much about the fashion and tradition of the Goodwood Revival, it was time to take a closer look at the other main attractions at the festival, the cars themselves. Perhaps the most spectacular feature of the Goodwood Revival is that not only do you get to see so many genuinely incredible vintage cars, but you actually get to see them racing, the specific activity for which they were originally designed. Having seen the view from the stands, I headed over to the assembly area to take advantage of yet another unique aspect of the Goodwood Revival. Unlike modern racing events, Goodwood is happy to allow the spectators to get right up next to the cars, something that greatly enhances the public's connection to the race. The real thrill for audiences at the Goodwood Revival is the amazing chance to see some of the finest cars in automotive history, and each year has something special. This year, the Goodwood Revival included a tribute to the incredible history of Ferrari. So to learn more, it was time to catch up with my friend and driver, James. James, hey, great to see you.
Great to see you too.
And have to say, this is even so much more than I expected.
How are you enjoying the event?
Yeah, well, you know, it's incredible. I mean, the energy, the cars, the racing. I mean, this really is the full package.
Indeed, and actually seeing the cars being used on track just adds that extra element to it. I mean, it's so special.
Yeah, I mean, I can see where Goodwood has kind of gotten its reputation for being, you know, the ultimate event for those passionate about cars. It's incredible. It's like every single post-World War car there is here at Goodwood.
Indeed. I mean, obviously from World War II up until 1965, they try and get together the best racing cars of those eras, put races on that suit each of those, and it's hard racing.
Yeah.
And it's a tricky circuit, but it's fantastic to see all of them. Plus, like this display here, you know, they always celebrate different things. So this year they're celebrating Graham Hill, which obviously at this time of, sadly, the Queen passing recently, you know, it's a very British thing. Graham Hill was a British Formula One driver, but also 75 years of Ferrari in racing.
Yeah.
And so they've assembled together from 1947 to 1966 some fantastic Ferraris for a demonstration.
Yeah, and of course, DK being a Ferrari specialist, you guys have a Ferrari that's a part of that group celebrating 75 years.
Yeah, so this is the Family 500 TRC that we saw back at base a few days ago, a car that we've owned since the late 70s. A car that was an Écurie Francorchamps car, so a customer racing car. And the history of Ferrari was really built by customer cars.
Yeah.
So teams like Écurie Francorchamps, Maranello Concessionaires, Chinetti in the States, which was known as North American Racing Team, and Scuderia Filippinetti really were guys that were just always out racing the customer Ferraris and getting those results at the big races, as well as the works Ferraris, especially the endurance scene, that built that reputation of Ferrari to where it is today. So this car itself was in the 2-litre class at Le Mans 57 and finished 7th overall and first in class. So it's very typical of those client cars, and all these different Ferraris we see, most of them, in fact, aside from a couple of works cars, are actually client cars or customer cars.
Yeah, so we've got a 12, 16 different Ferraris right here, all from different years. I mean, how do these Ferraris, or this group of Ferraris, kind of represent, you know, what's helped make the 50s and the 60s come to be known as that golden era of racing?
Well, you know, we're starting with the 166 Barchetta over there, which is Barchetta as in little boat in Italian. That's a 2-litre V12, just like the one we saw at the store that won Le Mans and Mille Miglia.
Okay.
That particular car was owned by the owner of Écurie Francorchamps, Jacques Soitters in the period. And you know, those cars were the first sort of customer racing cars from the late 40s. Then we move on to something like the 500 Mondial here from 1954. That's again a 2-litre, but this time a 4-cylinder engine.
Okay.
And then fast forward to our car here, which is a 500 TRC, so again a 4-cylinder, but from 1957. Again, very typical of the client racing cars. And next to it, we've got an 857S here, which is a 3.5-litre 4-cylinder. So that was a works Ferrari for the 1955 season. And then in the background over here, we've got late 50s 250 GT interim Berlinetta to a 250 GT short wheelbase to a CFAC Hot Rod 250 GT short wheelbase. Those cars were, you know, the kind of cars that were driven by Sterling Moss. He won the Goodwood TT here in 1960 and 1961 in those two cars. One of those cars is there, the 61 car, and the 1960 car is actually in the other paddock. So this is a 500 Mondial from 1953.
Okay.
It's a 2-litre 4-cylinder, so that's 500 times 4 is 2-litre. And this is typical of what clients would have raced, customer cars. They would have raced in the endurance racing series all over the world.
Yeah. So this is before Ferrari was doing the infamous, you know, V12 engines.
They did it at the same time. So when they went for the 2-litre class, they decided they'd go for a 4-cylinder because it was lighter weight and had much more torque than a little V12 like the 166 Barchetta. So this is a 1955 857S. So this would have been a works Ferrari, 3.5-litre 4-cylinder. In the next season, they actually tried having V12s and 4-cylinders because at some circuits the V12 was a better engine for the car, or a better race car, and at some circuits the 4-cylinder was better. Especially where they needed heavier braking, they found that big capacity 3.5-litre 4-cylinder gave you engine braking, so the car slowed down better.
Really?
Amazing little interesting fact. But yeah, this would have been a works car Hence it's 3.5 litre, not 2 litre, because the customer car's 2 litre. These are 3.5 litre.
And so that speaks to just the diversity of everything in that era. Nothing had really homogenized. Differences in the cars, differences in the tracks.
Yep.
I mean, everything was a little bit all over the place.
Indeed. And also, as you'll notice, the car's red because it was a works car.
Okay.
Whereas generally, all the customer cars were the colours of the racing team. So yellow and black for Curie Francorchamps, red with a blue stripe for Maranello Concessionaires, the Colonel Ronnie Horse team. Filippinetti was red with a white stripe, etc. and so on.
Yeah, interesting. And what are the works? I mean, what exactly does that mean? So a works car was just
works
a
would
factory?
be a factory-entered, factory-run, with factory drivers. You know, in terms of it was run by employees from the factory, as opposed to.
Were they generally more competitive?
They would have been the front-running cars. They would be in the top class. They would be, going for overall victory, as opposed to class victories that the customer cars were going for.
Would they race against customer cars at the same time?
Yes, they would do. Yeah, they would do, but not usually in the same class. If the works were going for the overall win, then they wouldn't sell those cars to customers. They would sell them the lesser cars from maybe the year before or for the lower classes. But then sometimes they decided, actually, we're not going to have a works entry, and they would sell the best cars to the works teams and then, the customer teams, and let them go racing.
Interesting. What about this right here? This
is a rear engine 246 SP. So it's, at the time where they went, sort of circa 1960-61, where they went to rear engine because they realized it would have better balance. But they were, again, playing with engines, and it's a 2.4 litre V6, which, would be normally called a Dino, but this is a Ferrari 246 SP.
Interesting. So again, I mean, a lot of experimentation, from the factories at this time.
Yeah. Indeed.
And this is totally different.
So this is a Formula One car from the early 60s. And in the early 60s, Formula One changed the rules to 1.5 litre.
Okay.
So lots of people built little V8 engines at 1.5 litre, screamers as they call them, because they could rev to insanely high revs. What Ferrari did was, again, a little V6 to 1.5 litre, and it was called the shark nose because it had this interesting nose feature. So this is the 166 Barchetta, so the V12 2-litre engine that we talked about, 1947 approximately. And then moving on to the short wheelbase, so the 250 GT short wheelbase.
And these were some really famous cars in the time.
Built over 2 years. You had 1960 cars and 1961 cars, and these were pretty much the last of the drive to the racetrack, race, drive home. Generally, customer cars, 90% of them were customer cars. And like this car here was one of the cars that Sterling Moss drove for Rob Walker to overall victory here at the Goodwood TT in 1961. This actual one.
Wow.
And Rob Walker the year before had an almost identical car, but a 1960 spec car, which to the untrained eye is almost identical. And he also won the TT in 1960 with that car. So in this colour combination, a short wheelbase won the TT at Goodwood in 1960 and 61, both for Rob Walker, both driven by Sterling Moss. And they're both here today. Amazing. And they're both cars that we've restored.
Really? Okay. Yeah,
so
I mean,
two more
most
short
of these
wheelbases.
Ferraris that have gone through the United Kingdom, I'm sure, have touched DK one way or another.
Indeed, yeah, there's a lot of them.
I mean, what's exciting about this group of cars is, unlike the pre-war cars, I mean, these really bear resemblance to, some of the modern cars that we have today. They're relatable, they're beautiful, they're sexy, and they were fast.
Indeed, yeah, they were fast, but also I think the beauty of Ferrari was that they were strong and reliable. They had a great engine that would last the distance of the race, and they had a strong chassis that would last the distance of the race. The handling was there, but it perhaps wasn't as good as, some of the English manufacturers.
Yeah.
So those cars were delicate. Ferrari was strong, robust, resilient, and would last the distance of the race, which all of these races were long distance. They didn't have 20-minute races. They were always 6, 12, 24 hours long. And that was what was the key ingredient to Ferrari's success.
Yeah.
And as you say, a lot of these cars, you listen to these names, Mondial, Monza, Tour de France, these are names that have been reused in recent years by Ferrari to launch new models that are very reminiscent of the past, highlighting their success over the years. The fact that Ferrari has always been at the forefront of motorsport.
Yeah. Who was racing these cars? I mean, were they professional race car drivers, or were they, really talented enthusiasts?
So this particular period of time, so late 40s to late 60s really, most of the cars would have been raced by gentleman driver owners, and quite often they were also distributors. So Curie Francorchamps, that was Jacques Swatters. His cars were usually yellow and black, but he had a lot of friends that were sort of part of the team that were nobility from the Benelux region, and they would be owners of cars, but they would be part of the Curie Francorchamps team. They'd run under the Curie Francorchamps banner, and they're raced all over the world. But they were generally gentlemen drivers with money from wealth, or successful businessmen, or from nobility, that would race the cars. And like I said, Ferrari really built their reputation as a result of their customer racing base. So they understood that they could have their works cars, but they could only field so many works cars at each race. Yeah. Whereas if they had a load of customers in successful and powerful cars that weren't necessarily in the same class as the works cars, but filling up the grid, it would help sell those cars. And like they said at Ford, win on Sunday, sell on Monday. Enzo definitely understood that. The racing cars were first, and it was his distributors, these guys, like Chinetti, like Colonel Ronnie Horn, like Jacques Swatters, that pushed him to build road cars as well. Because he said, look, we're winning races. Our customers are buying these cars, but they'll also buy road cars. And not everyone was racing. Those guys wanted road cars, and they wanted the road version of the cars that were winning the races on track.
And they were able to push into the nines and be competitive.
Absolutely, always. It always has been the go-to brand, and it still is, and it always will be. I think.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, the accessibility. I mean, you could probably do it, but I certainly couldn't get into a modern race car and even get it out of the paddock. But one of these older cars, I mean, someone who was an enthusiast, right, not professionally trained, could get in a car, take it around the racetrack, really push it hard, and have fun.
Yeah, and that relates to today as well, because here we are at the Goodwood Revival. The circuit is fast. It's actually, because it's a circuit that was closed in 1965 and reopened as a original style circuit, it isn't very safe. There's not much runoff, there's big tyre walls. So when we come here with the old cars, you have to treat the circuit with respect, and people drive them within their limits, because they know that if they have an accident, it could be very nasty. And that's something you don't get from modern motorsport. So much is at stake. It's not only the value of the car, it's not only damaging the car, it's personal health. It's you're risking your life, because these cars don't have the modern safety equipment that the more modern cars have.
I mean, open cockpit right here, not even with the roll cage, right?
Indeed, some of these cars won't have seatbelts at all. But it is fabulous to see this lineup of cars, to see how Ferrari worked through the years. Something that was key to that era, and why it was the golden era of motorsport, is that every year each car was a significant leap forwards. So if you tried to put cars from 4 years apart in the same race, it doesn't really work. Or if they are in the same race, there's a clear division. The more modern car
is winning.
It's going to win. Whereas in modern days, the cars do the same times they were doing 5 years ago. There are incremental differences, but there's not that big an advance in technology. Back then, we went from these pretty open cars with rudimentary suspension, with strong engines, to towards the end of the 60s even, really sophisticated space frame chassis with very lightweight bodies. Moved from the engine from the front to mid-engine setup for balance. I mean, year on year, technical advance was amazing. And everyone that comes here has just such a genuine thirst for these old cars, wants to see them out racing. And it's a visual show. It's noise, it's real racing. It's door handle to door handle with famous drivers, with famous cars, all in one place. It's just 3 days of heaven.
I mean, it's not like going to a car show like the Concours d'Elegance, right, where you see these same beautiful cars sitting on a lawn and not moving. I mean, here, right behind us, we have them racing flat out,
doing what they were designed to do. They were never designed or built to go to shows. Okay, they might have been built and designed, some cars, prototypes, to go to motor shows, but not to sit on a lawn and be appreciated in that manner.
Be sold and enjoyed.
It was to be raced and enjoyed, or driven to the racetrack, enjoyed, driven home, which is again, these 60s GT cars. A lot of these cars were, driven to the track, raced, and driven home.
Well, looking forward to the weekend, James. Thank you for your time.
Great to see you. What do you think of the suit?
I think it looks great. Nice, beautiful pool. I wish I had mine with me as well. And again, looking smart, looking the part. And I hear that you get to take this out in a little bit.
Yeah, I will do. So as part of the demonstration, all the Ferraris are going to go out and do 2 laps. In fact, I've got a passenger seat. You should come with me.
Really? There's room in this for 2?
Yeah, you should come with me. Let's do it.
All right.
That's a deal.
I can't turn that down.
All right, let's do it.
What makes the Goodwood Revival so unique is that it isn't just the incredible vintage automobiles that are from this era. The whole experience, every detail of the event is. Amidst all the pageantry and tradition on display, another truly British event brought the entire event to a brief but poignant halt. At exactly 5 p.m., a gun salute marked the start of a perfectly observed 2-minute silence held at the track to honor the sad passing of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, a much-loved monarch truly representative of Britain's golden era. With racing over for the day, it was time for both the crowds and the teams to head home and rest ahead of another packed day tomorrow. Tomorrow would also bring the chance to see James in action. His qualifier would decide his position on the starting grid as the cars lined up for the big race. What an opportunity this would be for me to learn just what it takes to be a racing driver from some of the world's best.
For each race, we've got to qualify once. It's a 20-minute session where everyone gets to go out and do the fastest time they can, and then that sets the grid position for the race. It is absolutely as it was in the 60s when the circuit closed. It's a very high-speed circuit, very little runoff. You've got to, make sure you really don't want to be coming off the circuit.
I grew up coming here and watching my dad race, and I was only a small boy, and to be here now in the same event in the same car, 15 years later, is pretty special.
It's the complete opposite. So in Formula One, you have massive amounts of downforce. It's milliseconds to really perfect everything. With these, they're monsters around here. No downforce. It's all mechanical grip, tiny little tires.